Part 2 of the Dolomites video covers the areas near Cortina. As a general orientation, this picture was taken from Lagazuoi, which towers over the Valparola Pass, which is down below. The road in the valley below leads to Cortina, which is visible in the valley at the upper left corner of this picture. The direction of that arrow is roughly south, which is pointing along the road towards Venice. Lake Misurina and the Tre Cime area are located to the northeast, as indicated by this red arrow. The rocky outcropping in front of this picture is still part of Lagazuoi. Cinque Torri, the so-called Five Towers, is down the valley and across the valley from us. During World War I, if you had been standing here, you would have been Austrian. You would have been looking at your enemies, the Italians, across the valley there at Cinque Torri and down in Cortina. This entire area is considered one giant open-air World War I museum because the whole area is so filled with trenches, tunnels, and fortifications. Heading westward on the road below will take you to the Valparola Pass, the Valparola Pass, and then on to roads leading to towns like Ortisei. When you stand at Cinque Torri, looking westward up that same valley, this is the view you would see. The previous picture was taken from this viewpoint, and that rocky outcropping was just below that. From the Gardena Valley, we headed mainly eastward, towards Cortina, going through the Valparola Pass, and Fort Tre Sassi was along the way. The scenery was good all the way there. In the Valparola Pass, before we reached Fort Tre Sassi, we stopped to take these pictures, looking back at the Refugio in that area of the pass. There is a tiny lake visible here, right next to the Refugio. Here it looks like the mountain is right behind the Refugio, but from a different view you can see that it's not actually right behind it. This is your view from the Refugio restaurant, facing roughly east towards Cortina. Back on the road, now we look eastward toward Cortina. We see the ugliest fort in the world, Fort Tre Sassi. Its ugliest museum, and it's also the ugliest fort. We'll take a look inside in a minute, but first we'll look around outside some more. The fort was built by Austria for World War I to control the road to Cortina. It displays things like exploded bombs, grenades, rifles with bayonets and grenades, and maybe some samurai armor thrown in for good measure. There's a machine gun with a cheerful Austrian target, and other displays which are really just pretty much inexplicable. This is camouflage, but it looks more like a genetic experiment gone wild. Let him out of his glass cage. This entire room wins the prize for what the heck is that all about? Unfortunately, we'll never really know, because in true Italian fashion, they took our money to let us into the museum for 5 minutes and then threw us out because it was time for lunch. Outside the fort, looking roughly southwest, you can see additional military fortifications, and if you look closely you can see some trenches. Perhaps more obvious in this picture. Lagazuoi towers over the Valparola Pass and is accessible by cable car. Here we pan a slightly larger area. Wait a minute, who are those twins? Cortina is in the valley at the far left. The location of Lagazuoi is visible in this view from Cinque Torri. This is from the top of the cable car by the pass.
Den höchsten von der Nummer, ja? Da rechts rüber zieht dieser Schneezunge. Genau, das ist der Steig.
So this is called Refugio Lagazuoi.
On le voit pas, mais on le voit presque. Tu vois l'éclair là? Tu vois le chemin qui part à droite? Là, tu le suis, puis après tu arrives dans les pierres. Ça te fait une mur, puis après tu
Yeah. Still up here at the peak near Refugio Lagazuoi. Lagazuoi. This is where you can eat overlooking it. Same spot, just looking behind me. They're working on a trail here. That's that little war museum down there. It's surprising how much snow there is up here, considering that it's warm and sunny. Many people, including me, wear shorts and find it quite comfortable. As with all the refugios and mountaintop ski lifts, there are hiking trails heading off everywhere. So almost anywhere, if you look closely enough, you'll see in the far distance groups of hikers. Here there's a lone hiker on the left, a group of at least 3 on the right, and in the center, but further away, there's another group. So, in any spectacular scene, just look a little more closely. That group in the distance before has moved ahead a little bit. In World War I, Austrians held Lagazuoi. The Italians held Cinque Torri, visible here across the valley on the left-hand side. Austrians shot at the Italians from this very spot, as you can see from this World War I photograph that was posted on a sign right here. The doors lead to an extensive system of tunnels, leading to openings for shooting at the enemy. The door to the right leads down to this tunnel. The doors straight ahead led to tunnels with machine gun nests. For most tunnels, they recommend a flashlight and protective headgear. However, we didn't go very far into this one, so we didn't do that. You probably can't see it very well, but there is a machine gun here, with a small hole looking out so they could shoot out from this place. Here's a close-up view of that machine gun. Here's another hole, but there's no machine gun at this spot. They do give official tours of these tunnels. Here's a group setting out right now from the same spot, properly equipped with their headgear and flashlights.
They're coming out over there.
Oh yeah.
And continuing.
Yeah, so they're continuing. I can't really tell where they're going. It's possible that they're going way over to there. You can see there's some holes in the rock, but this place is riddled with tunnels. To give you an idea of the area, still up here at Lagazuoi. That outcropping is definitely on a hiking path, as you can see when you look more closely. Here's a different hiker at that same spot. Cinque Torri means 5 towers or 5 peaks in Italian. It overlooks the road between Cortina and Lagazuoi, or the Valparola Pass. Of course, they had the inevitable Refugio restaurant at the top of the ski lift. This one's a little bit swankier than the usual. Just as there's often hikers on trails, there's quite often climbers on the rocks. Take a close look here. That's not a fly on the glass. Here's the two of us standing next to that Refugio. The name 5 Towers is a little bit dubious now. Here you can really see 4 major towers in this view, and then a pile of blocks. People say that that pile of blocks was the 5th tower, but it collapsed. Depending on where you stand, there really appear to be anywhere between 4 and 7 towers. People really enjoy relaxing on that meadow between the ski lift, the Refugio, and the 5 towers. This is a view when you're relaxing on that meadow, looking roughly eastward. But those jagged mountains are not as close as they look. There's a big valley in between them. You get a more complete view when you stand next to the easternmost of the towers, looking out over the same valley. On the other side of the towers, looking westward up the valley, you see the Valparola Pass, the Valparola Pass, and overlooking it, Lagazuoi. We'll continue this orientation by swinging to the north. Now we're getting back to the namesake 5 towers. Now we're back to that relaxing meadow. There's the Refugio. And here's the ski lift that brought us up. Next, we'll take a look at the World War I fortifications that were built by the Italians who were here during World War I. These buildings are nestled into canyons and really well protected. These buildings include a little field hospital. The display inside the hospital makes me question the Italians' triage practices. They seem to have done a fine job of patching up this guy's leg, but they missed the fact that he has no head. There were quite a few bunkers for shooting at the Austrians. Here's one of them. So this is a view from inside one of the bunkers. They're built into the side of the hill. Then you'd look out. And presumably shoot at people way down in the valley there somewhere. So these are the trenches that they fought from. Still here. They were afraid of fighting World War I again, I guess. More trenches here. Watch out, Linda. You could be shot there. You're exposed. Now back to scenery. You can walk right in amongst the 5 or so towers. That big gap in the eastern tower is only visible from certain angles. There's a man climbing up one of the tallest of the Cinque Torri. 5 towers. Here's an even closer view. He doesn't appear to be using any ropes for safety. And now we're around kind of the side of the Cinque Torri, the 5 towers. But who's counting? So, Still up here at Cinque Torri. I think that would be Cortina d'Ampezzo down there. Yeah, I'm sure it would be. Looking to the left a little bit. Okay, so we have Cinque Torri from this side now. Now we're right in amongst the Torri here. People climbing here too. Inside the Cinque Torri. Oh, there's a climber. Another view looking down on Cortina. So here we have yet another view of Cortina. This is over from yet a different side of the Cinque Torri. There's a little refugio down there. And here's a little bit better view of the valley itself. Lake Misurina is northeast of Cortina. This view is looking to the north. To the northeast, the right side of the picture, that's the set of mountains associated with the Tre Cime area. Here's a closer view of that northeast end of the lake. You'll see our hike around those peaks later in this video. You can barely make out the Refugio Oronzo and its huge parking lot here. The big hotel at the north end of the lake is called the Grand Hotel Misurina. This is the west side of the lake. They only have paddle boats, which probably helps keep the water clear. They seem to have a copy of the Grand Hotel at the south end of the lake. This is the view looking directly south. Tre Cime is northeast of Lake Misurina, which in turn is northeast of Cortina. Tre Cime means 3 peaks in Italian. Nitpickers may think there are more than 3 here, but who's counting? You can't see this view from Lake Misurina. This is really the back side of those mountains, and it takes a hike to get here. The hike to Tre Cime starts at the Refugio Oronzo. It makes a loop around the mountains behind it. From here you can see some jagged mountains. Also, you can see an odd local tourist tradition, which seems to be stone graffiti. On the left side of this meadow, people have arranged stones. I guess that's an ecologically friendly way of doing graffiti without using paint. From here, you can also see Lake Misurina in the distance. So we're up here now at Tre Cime, which is east of Cortina. We're overlooking Lake Misurina, which is down there. The hills are alive with the sounds of bees buzzing. We tried going up there at first, but the scree got kind of rough. Another local tradition seems to be piling up of stones like trail markers. Apparently the old Monty Python Society for putting things on top of other things must be active here. So we continue on this path. The next stop is called Longholm. It's another refugio. Here we're just going to pan back on the trail we just came from. Back to the view of Lake Misurina. Looking forward, the scenery changes now. A few steeper mountains that we're close to. And in the distance, a meadow here, and the trail going to it. We'll be on that trail. There's a junction that we're at, and we'll be heading down that trail. Linda continuing on the trail there. We pass some steep mountains along the way, and we pass some odd-looking mountains. For scale, take a look at the hikers in the bottom right corner of the picture. At this point, we can still occasionally see Lake Misurina, but views in other directions are quite different. The trail here is continuing on the right, where that hiker is. There are some kids playing in the snow down there. We've finally gone around the back side of the mountain now, so that we can see the Tre Cime, the three peaks, or the Drei Zinnen in German. So it's 3 or more peaks. The farthest point on our loop trail will be the Refugio Locatelli, also known as the Drei Zinnen hut, visible here in the distance. However, before we get there, there's actually another hut, the Refugio Longholm, not visible here. And continuing the view from this area, we continue around. That's the trail we just came from. And we complete the area panning back at the Tre Cime, the Drei Zinnen, the 3 towers, or more. There appeared to be some shortcut trails here, but they weren't on the map, and we were afraid they might dead end or just turn into very steep scree. The next stop was Longholm, a refugio at the base of the Tre Cime in a meadow there. We think the Alm means meadow in German. These refugios are pretty busy. And we'll be heading toward that one over there next. This is a view of the meadow next to Longholm, which is at the base of the Tre Cime. Again, there's the actual Tre Cime, 3 or more towers. They might have miscounted. At the base of the Tre Cime, there was a meadow, a pond, and a stream where a lot of people relaxed and ate. So we'll have lunch by this little brook here. Nice little stream. Very clear water. After lunch, we continued along the trail toward the Refugio Locatelli. Ended up with an extra little valley we didn't even know about. So, down we went. By the way, notice all the stone graffiti down there. And over to the other side. And back up. From the other side of the valley, it really does look like there's mainly just 3 peaks. We're near the top of the valley now, only to discover that there's another hill to climb up. Must be a group of school kids here, all singing.
That's where we're gonna go.
Yeah, we'll be going up there. And they're still coming. Looking back from partway up that hill, there's a view of the valley and Tre Cime. And you can hear some singing. We have now reached the Refugio Locatelli, or in German, the Dreisinnen hut. This is roughly the halfway point in the loop trail. After this stop at the hut, next we'll take the path around the left-hand side of the Tre Cime. Just before reaching that left edge of the Tre Cime, we come across this stark mountain, and here is a view of the overall area. Here's the edge of the Tre Cime, and then we will look to the area beyond it. The next stop is the Refugio Lavaredo, visible in the valley here below. A little further down that same valley, that green area contains a war monument. Here we continue down the path to the Lavaredo Refugio. The short war monuments are blocked by the hill here, but you can see some stone graffiti. As we reach this chapel, we'll soon be able to see our endpoint, Refugio Oronzo. So we came from back over there, swinging the view around here. The road's quite wide because it was a World War I road. There's the war monuments. You can see them in this view. The usual jagged mountains. Wide road. There's a chapel here. And then finally in the distance we can see the final Refugio Oronzo. To our right here, that is the other side of the Tre Cime. This is what they look like from this side. And now the final Refugio is in sight. Refugio Oronzo looks a lot more interesting from this side than it did at the beginning of the hike from the front. So we're guessing that's probably Cortina down there. A little closer was that Lake Misurina, but you can't quite see it from this view. It was pretty close. And here we're really at the end finally. Cortina's full name is actually Cortina d'Ampezzo. It's the major town center in the eastern portion of the Dolomites. It was also the site of one of the Winter Olympics during the 1950s. Cortina is in a broad valley surrounded by mountains. This view is taken from the west side of town looking eastward. And we're panning from the northern to the southern end of the town. These views are from the road as you approach Cortina. And here is looking extremely south from that same position along the road. From down in the southern end of town, the mountains to the southeast look like this. In the distance, up close, they look a little bit more like this, and then Looking basically purely east, they look like this. You see these mountains looking to the northeast. You see these mountains looking to the northwest. Notice the hiking and biking trail here, which is quite popular. This is the view looking to the west, from that southern end of town. We're at the Rosa Petra Resort now, but we never are far away from making of hay, since making of hay and feeding it to cows and then milking them is the main industry here besides tourism, a distant second to tourism. Now we'll look at the downtown area of Cortina. This is the town of Cortina. Here are some other scenes from around Cortina. The mountains are never too far away.